This is your host, Danny, and this is Grammar from English Plus Podcast. Today we're going to continue our grammar course. We finished Chapter 1 in 2 episodes last week and the week before. This week we're going to start with Chapter 2, and we will also have 2 episodes to cover Chapter 2. In Chapter 2, we're going to focus on perfect and perfect progressive tenses. For the ones of you who didn't have the chance to listen to the first 2 episodes, you can check them anytime, or you can start from this episode if you feel that you're okay with the topic of the first chapter, which was present and past simple and progressive. So today, we're going to start talking about perfect and perfect progressive tenses. But before we start, let me remind you that there's a link in the description of the episode that will take you to the custom post I created on the website. Go to the website because you will have all the exercises you need to check your understanding of the things we're talking about here. I'm going to make it as simple as possible and as understandable as possible, but practicing what you're learning is irreplaceable. You cannot learn just by listening to me. So please take the link and take your English with it to the next level. As I told you, there's a custom post on my website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com. There you will find everything you need to practice the things we're talking about. And of course, there will be extra practice so that you make sure you really understand everything we're going to talk about today. And there's also the other link in the description that will take you to my Patreon page. Support me and support our learning community so that I can continue creating content for our learning community, and even more. I can create more and integrate more technologies that will be very helpful on the website and in other channels as well. Join the family of our patrons. Help us survive, grow, and thrive. With your support, nothing is impossible. And now, without further ado, let's start talking about perfect and perfect progressive tenses. So, today we're going to talk about perfect and perfect progressive tenses, and we will start with the present, and in the next episode we will talk about the past perfect and perfect progressive tenses. But before we start, I have 10 sentences for you. These 10 sentences will help you know how familiar you are with the things that we're going to learn in this chapter. I'm going to say the sentence, and you will have to decide whether the sentence is correct or incorrect. And if it is incorrect, obviously try to correct it. If you understand why this is a mistake and why you made a change, most probably you know almost everything we're going to talk about in this chapter. If you're not sure about it, if you can spot the mistakes but you don't know how to correct them, if you can correct the mistakes but you don't know why this is correct and this is incorrect, and of course, if you can't tell whether this sentence is correct or incorrect, don't worry, because that's exactly what we're going to learn in Chapter 2. We're going to talk about all these things. So let's start with the very first sentence. Remember, you will have to decide whether it's correct, incorrect, and if it is incorrect, try to correct it. I will give you a couple of seconds to think, but of course you can pause the audio if you want. So, the first sentence, how long have you known my sister? What do you think? Is that correct? Incorrect? Well, this sentence is incorrect. And the incorrect thing in it is the main verb. I said, how long have you known my sister? But because this is present perfect, I cannot say know in its original form, or it's in zero form. I have to put it in past participle. How long have you known my sister? So, I hope you got that right. Let's move to the next sentence. We have been in this meeting since 7 a.m. What do you think? Well, this sentence is correct, so no changes are necessary. Now let's move to the third sentence. Did you ever seen a ghost? Did you ever seen a ghost? What do you think? Well, this one is incorrect. We cannot say, did you ever seen a ghost? We should say, have you ever seen a ghost? Now, I'm not going to explain anything now because that's what we're going to talk about in the episode. So I'm just going to tell you if it is incorrect, the correction, and we'll move on. So now let's move on and talk about the next sentence. How you been? I haven't seen you for a while. How you been? I haven't seen you for a while. What do you think? Well, this is also incorrect. We cannot say how you been. we should say, how have you been? How have you been? I haven't seen you for a while. So, for the next sentence, Jonas owned his home since last year, but his parents helped him buy it. What do you think? Well, this one is incorrect. We should say Jonas has owned his home since last year, but his parents helped him buy it. And now for the next one. How long you have been waiting for me? How long you have been waiting for me? What do you think? Well, this sentence is also incorrect. We cannot say how long you have been waiting for me. We should say how long have you been waiting for me? And now for the next one. I am watching TV since I got home. I am watching TV since I got home. What do you think? Well, this one is also incorrect. We cannot say I am watching TV since I got home. We should say I have been watching TV since I got home. And now for the next one. I had felt sick after dinner, so I went to bed. I had felt sick after dinner, so I went to bed. What do you think? Well, this one is correct. No change is necessary. And the next one. We'd wanted to go out to breakfast, but we overslept. We'd wanted to go out to breakfast, but we overslept. What do you think? Well, this one is correct. No change is necessary. And now for the last one, before we start talking about the perfect and the perfect progressive tenses. Tony's eyes were itchy and red because he had been working in a dusty room. Tony's eyes were itchy and red because he had been working in a dusty room. What do you think? Well, this last one is correct. So now you can ask yourselves, now you can see whether you knew all of these things, you knew some of them, but you didn't exactly know why this is right or this is wrong, even if you got it right. If you are in this situation, you're not sure about the answers, you had some of the answers right, some of them wrong, but you're still not sure why this is right and why this is wrong, so you're in the right place because we will start talking about all these things. By the time we finish chapter 2, you will know for certain why this sentence is right, why this sentence is wrong, and how to correct these sentences if they are wrong. And now let's start with the very first idea that I want to talk about, and that is regular and irregular verbs. Because when we talk about perfect tenses, we will definitely have to deal with irregular verbs. I know that I talked about it last time, and I said that irregular verbs are irregular, and you just have to check the lists that are everywhere online. But I will talk about a couple of things that might make it a little bit easier for you to remember what you need to look for when you have irregular verbs. So, the first thing, let's talk about regular verbs. For regular verbs, we talked in chapter 1 about the simple past, and we said that for regular verbs, we add ed. And for past participle, guess what happens? We also add ed. Nothing changes. When we talk about regular verbs, the simple past form and the past participle are just the same. They don't change. We just add ed both to simple past and past participle. For example, if we say stop, in the past it becomes stopped, ed. And in the past participle, it's just the same, stopped. Start, for example, started in the past and started in the past participle. Now, for those of you who might still wondering why are we talking about the past participle or the third form as some call it, well, because the past participle is used in all perfect tenses, whether we're talking about the present perfect, the past perfect, or the future perfect. You will need the main verb to be in past participle form. That's why we're talking about past participle. If you're just wondering why is it that we are starting with regular and irregular verbs instead of just jumping in and start with the present perfect, that's why. So, that is about regular verbs. But what about irregular verbs? Now, irregular verbs are, as I said, irregular. So, sometimes they don't change at all, like hit. It stays hit in past simple and past participle. Sometimes the change is subtle, like, for example, with swim. In the past is swam with A instead of I, and in the past participle is swum with U instead of I and A. Other verbs change a little bit differently, like break becomes broke in the past, and in the past participle, it's broken. Some of them change a lot. So how can we tell? Of course, there is no rule, but I'm going to give you a couple of things that you might use kind of to classify irregular verbs in a way and make them easier to remember. We can classify them in many groups. Let's start with the first group, and I will give you a couple of examples, but I'm not going to tell you about all the irregular verbs. It's a very big list. I'm going to tell you about groups of irregular verbs that share the same characteristics. I'll start with the first group when all three forms are the same. All three forms, I'm talking about the simple form, the simple past, and the past participle. Or as some people might call it, the first form, the second form, and the third form. The first form, they mean simple form. The second form for the simple past, and the third form for the past participle. So whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter. All I care about is that you remember these things, you understand these things. That's all, whatever you want to call them. So the first group, all three forms are the same. I'll give you a couple of examples. We have, for example, the verb bet. Now, bet is the simple form of the verb, obviously. But in the past, it doesn't change. It stays bet. In the past participle, it stays bet. It doesn't change. We have other verbs like that, like cut. It stays the same. Hit stays the same. Hurt, let, put. All of these verbs stay the same in the three forms. All three forms are the same. So you can make your first group. The first group is about the verbs that don't change at all. They are the same in simple form, simple past, and past participle. Then we have the second group. The past participle ends in en. And we have a lot of verbs like that, a lot of common verbs actually. For example, bite. Bite is the simple form. Bit is the simple past, and bitten, en, ends in en. We have other verbs like break. Break, broke, broken, the past participle, en. Choose, chose, chosen, en. Drive, drove, driven. Eat, ate, eaten. Fall, fell, fallen. Forget, forgot, forgotten. Forgive, forgave, forgiven. A lot of verbs like that. So when you group these verbs together, it will be a lot easier for you to remember them. Remember, I'm just saying that not to list all the irregular verbs. There are a lot of other irregular verbs I'm not talking about here, but I'm just doing this to help you remember the irregular verbs. And when we put things in categories like that, it will be a lot easier for us to remember them later. What about the third group? The third group, the vowel changes from A in the simple past to U in the simple participle. We have verbs like begin. Begin, that's the simple form. In simple past, it becomes began, A. In the past participle, it's begun, U. So the vowel changes from A in the simple past to U. There are other verbs like drink, ring, drink, drank, drunk, ring, rang, rung, sing, sang, sung. We have verbs like that. The vowel changes from A to U. We have another group where the past tense and the past participle forms are the same. Well, baby, that's an easy group because you don't have to remember two different new forms. It's just one. Like buy, for example, the past of buy is bought, the past participle is bought. Catch, caught, and caught. Feel, felt, felt. Fight, the past is fought, and the past participle is fought. Sleep, the past is slept, the past participle is also slept. We have a lot of verbs like that when the past simple and the past participle forms are just the same. So you only need to remember one of them, and of course, you will have to put them in this group to remember that we have the same form for both the past tense and the past participle. Then we have another group when the past participle adds a final N to the simple form of the verb or sometimes the simple past form of the verb with or without a spelling change. Now, I know that's too complicated, but just remember it ends with N. Only N, not EN like the ones I told you about before. Like do, for example, becomes done. Fly, flown. Grow, grown. Know, known. See, seen. Swear, sworn. And other verbs like that. That is another group. You might put some verbs, but this is not the most common group, I will have to say. The most common group of all the ones I told you about is the group when the past tense and the past participle forms are just the same. Now, we have other groups. I wouldn't call them groups because there are not a lot of verbs in there, but there are some verbs, actually 3 verbs, when the first and third forms are the same, like become. Become in the past is became, and the past participle is just like the simple form. Become, became, become is the past participle again. Come it's the same. Come in the past is came, the past participle is come. Run belongs to this group as well. Run in the past is ran, the past participle is also run, just like the simple form. And we have two verbs. I will call them a group, of course, but they're just two verbs in this group where one of the three forms is very different, like verb to be. Now, verb to be in the past participle is been, B-E-E-N, but in the past it's was and were. What does that have to do with be? Nothing. It's so different. So this verb is special. In the past, it's so different, but in the past participle, it's very close to the simple form. Go has the same story. Go in the past is went. Well, what does went have to do with go? I don't know, but that's irregular, remember? So, go in the past becomes went, and in the past participle is gone. So, only these two verbs have those crazy forms, or very different from the simple form. And finally, we have the last group where both regular and irregular forms are used. Now, the regular form is more common in American English and the irregular form is more common in British English. That's the usual case. I'll give you a couple of examples. Now, for example, awake. Awake can be used as awakened, the regular form, I just add ed, and can be used as awoke in the past and awoken in the past participle. Now, American English usually tends to use the regular form when it is possible and stay away from the irregular form, while in British English, we tend to use the irregular form even if there is a regular form of the verb. We have other verbs, other famous verbs like dream. You can say dreamed or dreamt. Both are possible. So in American English, we usually use dreamed with the ed, the regular ending, and in British English, we usually use the t ending, which is the irregular ending. We have other verbs like that as well. So that is about the regular and irregular verbs. Why did I say that? Why did I mention that? To just list all the verbs? Not at all. But I want you to think about them in categories because that will make it a lot easier for you to remember. And then you will start comparing verbs and you will see that some verbs have similarities. But when you can think about them in categories like that, it's a lot easier. But remember, why did we talk about the past participle? Because it is the form of the main verb in all perfect tenses. That's why we need it. We didn't need it last time we're in chapter 1 because we were talking about the present past, simple, and progressive. And we don't need the past participle for these tenses. But for now, we're talking about the perfect and the perfect progressive. We definitely need the past participle. That's why we talked about that. So I hope I helped you in a way to remember irregular verbs better. And now, let's start talking about the present perfect. We'll start talking about the present perfect when it is used with since and for, because this is one of the most common uses of the present perfect. That's coming next. Don't go away.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Looking to enhance your English skills while exploring a world of knowledge? Then English Plus Podcast website is just for you. Dive into diverse topics ranging from science to literature, history to business, and myths to modern insights. Each episode from our podcast or article from our magazine is a journey of learning and discovery, designed to not only improve your language skills, but also broaden your understanding of the world. Join us at English Plus Podcast, where language meets limitless learning. Tune in today and take your English to the next level. Visit EnglishPlusPodcast.com to start your journey. English Plus Podcast, language, learning, enlightenment. Never stop learning with English Plus. So, the present perfect with since and for. Now, why do we use the present perfect with since and for? You have to understand that the present perfect, or any perfect tense for that matter, has to link two times together. That's why it is perfect. It's not simple. The simple tenses, they just talk about simple actions. It is not complex. It is not linking two times together. When it links two times together, especially in the way that I'm going to tell you about in the examples we're going to have, you're going to see that there's always this kind of complex link. It's not complex. It's not complicated to understand. So here, when we link two times together, we have a perfect tense. But which two times? Is it the present with the past? Is it the present with the future? Well, that will decide which perfect should we use. If you're linking the past to the present, that's what we are using for our present perfect. And since and for are used just to do that. For example, Mrs. O has been a teacher since 2002. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean that Mrs. O is dead now? No, not at all. Does that mean that she's not teaching anymore? Again, no. She is still a teacher. But I'm saying that she started in 2002 and she is still teaching now. So the link is between those 2 points. One point is in the past, that's when she started in 2002. The second point is now, is the present, and it is now. So you can calculate it and know that she has been teaching for 19 years as of the time of recording this episode, which is 2021. So here, Mrs. O has been a teacher since 2002. That means I'm linking this point in the past. She started teaching in 2002. She's still a teacher now. Instead of saying that this way, 2 sentences, remember what I said about using 1 sentence in the place of 2 when you have the chance is always a good idea in English. So here, instead of saying Mrs. O started teaching in 2002, she is still a teacher now. So that's too long. 2 sentences, and I may need a 3rd sentence to tell you how long she has been teaching. That's too much. We can say that just in 1 sentence using the power of since with the present perfect. Mrs. O has been a teacher since 2002. And here, I will focus a little bit on the form. Now you can see our main verb is verb to be, so we use the past participle of the main verb all the time. Whenever you want to use present perfect, you use the past participle of the main verb. But we need an auxiliary verb, and in this case, we use have. Obviously, have or has. Now here, Mrs. O, she has. And if we want to use it with we, you, I, etc., we say have. I have been, you have been, we have been, they have been, but he, she, it has been. And if we want to use negatives, we say has not been or have not been. And of course, it's just the same. Have you been a teacher for a long time? Has she been doing this for a long time? Etc., etc. So the form of the present perfect is not that difficult because there are no changes between affirmative and negative. Personally, I think the form is more difficult in simple tenses because in simple tenses there is a change. There's a big change between the affirmative and negative. When we go to negative in questions, we have to remember to put the verb back in the simple form, not with s and not with this ed or irregular ending. So it might be a little bit confusing. But with present perfect, that shouldn't be confusing at all because the verb is always in past participle, all the time, no exceptions. And the helping verb is always verb to have. Well, verb to have here, of course, we will need to be clever about it and know that verb to have can be in the present, that's present perfect, can be in the past, had, and that's past perfect, and later on, we will learn that also can be used in the future. But for now, let's stick to the present perfect, and especially with since and for. So, the present perfect is often used with since and for to talk about situations that began in the past and continue up to now. You see this link between the past and the present. Now, let me give you a couple more examples to learn the difference between since and for, because they serve the same purpose, but technically they are different, so we cannot use the same time expression after them. But they both serve the same purpose. Now, let me give you a couple of examples. I have been in this city since last May. We have been here since 9 o'clock. Now, when I say I have been in this city since last May, where am I now? I'm still in this city. So that's why I use present perfect. If I am somewhere else, I will be misleading people. I cannot say I have been in this city. And here, of course, we're saying this city, so obviously you're still in this city. But let's just get rid of this city for a moment and say Paris. I have been in Paris since last May. Now, when you say Paris here, that definitely means that you are still in Paris. If you're not in Paris, you can't say that at all. You will have to choose the past instead. You say, I was in Paris, and you can't say since, because since means you're still there now. So you can say, I was in Paris last May. Not since last May, that's past. But don't worry, we will talk more about the difference between the present perfect and the past. So here, let's focus back on since and for. I have been in this city since last May. We have been here since 9 o'clock. So here, when we use since last May, since 9 o'clock, what is the special thing about the time expression we use after since? We're talking about a specific point in time. When you want to use since, you use after it a specific point in time. And obviously in the past, like 2002, last May, 9 o'clock this morning. So all of these things are in the past, or all of these time expressions are in the past. But now let's see how we can use for. Rita knows Rob. They met 2 months ago. Now here, I'm just saying that so that you understand the example. Usually, I just told you earlier, if you can say whatever you want to say in one sentence, don't use two. So I know this is not the best way to say it, but I'm just trying to help you understand the situation. So Rita knows Rob. They met 2 months ago. That's the situation. The sentence goes like, she has known him for 2 months. Now, let's say I met a person 3 years ago. I can say, I have known this person for 3 years. Now, what is the difference between since and for? Since, can't we say since 2 months or since 2 years? No, we cannot, because 2 months, 3 years is not a specific point in time. It is a length of time. 2 months, 3 years, 1 week, 2 weeks, 5 hours, whatever. A length in time, if you want to use a length in time, you use for with it. You don't use since. Since, you use it for a specific point in time. Now, going back to Mrs. O's example, Mrs. O has been a teacher since 2002 or for 19 years. So, you would tell me what's the difference? Which one is better? Should we use since more often or for more often? Well, it's up to you. If you want to focus on the length of time, use for. If you want to focus on the specific point of time, use since. But if you don't have a specific thing to focus on, use either. Since or for, they're just the same. No difference. But sometimes we may want to use since because we want to be specific and we want to specify this point in time. And sometimes it is necessary because it is a specific point in time, as I will show you in the coming 2 examples. But sometimes you would rather just talk about the length of time. That's what you want to talk about, so use for. But there is no difference between them at all. The difference is only in the time expression we use after them. Since with a specific point in time, for with a length of time. Now, since sometimes is the only option you have because it can be used with a time clause. A time clause may follow since. For example, I have known Rob since, now here, it's not since 2001 or 2013 or whatever. It is a clause that I want to use. I have known Rob since I was in high school. Well, that is a specific time in the past, but I don't know when. Maybe that was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It doesn't matter, but it is a specific time in the past. It is actually a time clause. And when we want to use a time clause, we use since with it. We can't use for. Another example, we have lived in an apartment since we moved to the city. Now here, I can say since 2009, but this is not the point. The point is I'm telling you since we moved to the city. That's what I want to say. I don't care about which year that was. That's not the point. The point is that since we moved to this city, we have lived in an apartment. And we're still living in an apartment. Remember, present perfect. Don't you ever forget about that. We're talking about something that is still true to the present. And that is the first meaning you should know about the present perfect. Remember, I always say that. And maybe the ones who've been listening to my grammar episodes for a long time are kind of sick and tired of me saying that. But I will say it one more time. Remember that the tenses are tools in your hands. Tools for you to express yourself better, not the other way around. You don't look for which tense to use before you know what you want to say. You should think about what you want to say first and then choose the right tool for the job. They are here to help you, not the other way around, not to complicate your life. All right? So, that being said, let's move on to talk more about the present perfect. We will talk about more of the common uses of the present perfect. That's coming next.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Unlock the marvels of mycology and take a journey of deep discovery into the divine. LordofSpore.com has 21 unique varieties of magic mushroom spores that will open doors you never knew existed. From the shamanic rituals of 10,000-year-old tribes, to Plato, Socrates, the Dionysian mysteries, and even early Christianity, entheogens have been the key to unlocking the secrets of the infinite realm that we are all part of, offering us mere mortals a glimpse into the sacred meaning of everything we see, and everything we don't. Join us on our journey. It starts with a few microscopic mushroom spores, and it grows into a network across time and space, connecting us all to infinity and beyond.
So now we will talk about some other uses of the present perfect, and let me tell you, these are very common uses, and maybe even more common than using the present perfect with since and for. Now, I said that the perfect always links two times together, but sometimes this time you're linking from, which is in the past, is not always clear. Sometimes it's unspecified. Actually, most of the times it is unspecified with the present perfect. For example, you can say, have you ever seen snow? Now that is present perfect. It's perfectly correct. No problems about that. But why do I use have you ever seen snow? Why do I use the present perfect? What is the link? Where is actually the link between the past and the present? Well, this is like saying, have you ever seen snow all your life, or since your first memory in life, whatever, until now? I'm talking about your experience all of your life until now. Here, you may answer, yes, I have, or no, I haven't. No, I haven't. I've never seen snow. Or you can say, yes, I have seen snow a lot of times. I live in a cold place and I see snow every year. You can say that. Your answer can be, yes, I have, or no, I haven't. That doesn't matter. And you may use this to talk about things you have done in your life before and things you haven't done in your life before. Remember, it is not just to talk about what happened. You can also use the present perfect to talk about what didn't happen, or obviously, in our case, what hasn't happened. I haven't seen snow in my life, or I haven't been to the mountains in my life. I haven't been on a boat in my life. I haven't seen this movie before. Or it's the other way around. I have seen this movie before. I have met Jack before. And at this point, you might say, well, yes, we understand that it is related to the present, but what is this? It's a weak relation. No, it's not a weak relation. It's a very strong connection. When I say I have seen this movie before, what is the direct relation to the present? I know this movie. Right now, I know this movie. Maybe I'm telling you that because I know this movie and I can tell you about it, or I know this movie so I don't want to watch it again. When I say that I have met Jack before, what does that mean? I know Jack. Don't introduce me. I know him. Or I'm just telling you that this is a familiar face. So there is always connection to the present. With a present perfect, there's always connection. It doesn't have to be clear all the time. But the power of the present perfect is that it holds a lot more meaning than the words you use to make the present perfect. You use a couple of words, but the meaning is much bigger. That's why it is a very powerful tense in English. So here, getting back to this link between the unspecified time to the present perfect can talk about events that have or haven't happened before now. That's the link, before now. The exact time of the event is unspecified, is not important. Now we use some adverbs that can help you even make better sentences. We use ever, never, yet, or still, already, and lately. We often use those with the present perfect. Now here, let's take a look at another example. Have you finished your homework yet? And you can answer, I still haven't finished mine. Or you can say, yes, I've already finished it. So you can obviously answer in affirmative or negative based on the situation. But here, you might say, well, what's the time frame? It's not about an experience all your life. No, it's not about all your life. It's from the time the people started up doing this homework until now. So it doesn't have to be always a lifetime experience. Although we use the present perfect for lifetime experience a lot. But we can use it also not for a lifetime experience, but for something that has started recently and I'm asking about now, just like homework. Now let me give you a little bit more details about the adverbs just and recently with the present perfect. They emphasize that the action was recently completed. Like when we say Sarah has recently finished her work or Sarah has just finished her work, we can say Sarah has finished her work. That's fine. It's not a big deal. But if you say just or recently, you emphasize that the action was completed recently. That's the point. So that is about the present perfect, but that's not everything. We can still use the present perfect for other meanings as well. The present perfect can also express an event that has occurred repeatedly from a point in the past up to the present time. The event may happen again. For example, we've had 3 tests so far this term. Now here you might say, why would you use present perfect? You can simply use the simple past. Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. But guess what? Because here I want to tell you that this is a repeated event and it may happen again. That's the link to the present. That's why I use the present perfect. If you just want to tell me what happened in the past, we took 3 tests last term. See here? We're talking about last term. Last term is over. Nothing can add up to the number of tests we took last term. But when we talk about this term, the number of tests may increase. We've had 3 tests so far. So far, that means we may have more. Of course, you don't have to use so far, but I'm just using it to show you that we're talking about a repeated action from a point in the past up to the present time, and the event may happen again. Another example, I've met many people since I came here, but I'm still here, and I may meet more people before I leave. See here, I've met many people since I came here. But if you're telling me about the party that happened last night, you can't say I've met many people in the party last night. What does that mean? Because even if you've met 100 people in the party last night, that's in the past, and nothing can change that repeated action in the past. Nothing can add up to the number of people you met last night. So you will have to say, I met many people when I came here last night or at the party last night. But since you're still in the party and there is a chance that this may happen again or this may repeat one more time, at least one more time, you can use the present perfect like I've met many people since I came here. So that is also another use of the present perfect to talk about repeated actions. So that is in a nutshell why we use the present perfect. Of course, there are some other uses, some more nuances and some more advanced stuff that we will talk about later down the line in the course. What I have in mind for this course is that I will start with the essential stuff that you need to know about the tenses, modals, conditionals, clauses, etc. A lot of the things that you need to know without going into the very advanced stuff. But when we finish all the topics, I will come back to add to all the topics I mentioned in this grammar course, but at an advanced level. And we will talk about all these nuances. But to be honest, that's enough for you now to be able to express yourself in different ways. Now, I had plans to add one more point, and that is to go in more details and compare the present perfect with the past simple, but I guess that it is a lot to take in one episode. I will leave that to next episode. Next episode, we will continue with chapter 2, of course. We will talk about the present perfect with the past simple, or we will compare between these two because there are a lot of places where they intersect and you can't tell for sure whether to use the past simple or the present perfect, so that's important. We will also talk about the present perfect continuous. And if we have time, we will talk about the past perfect and the past perfect continuous. But that will all happen next time. But one last thing I want to tell you about is about the contractions that we can use with have or has. Now for have, we can contract it or make it shorter by using apostrophe VE. For example, I can say I have been there, or you can say I've been there. For has, we can put apostrophe S, like he has been there or he's been there. Here you will find that this is a little bit confusing because it is the same contraction of verb to be is. How can you tell if it is he is been there or he has been there? Well, that's when the past participle comes in handy. Now, I know that this can be a little bit complicated when we learn the passive voice because then you will still have past participle, but let's leave that until we get to it. For now, when you see the past participle after he's, so most probably it is he has been. Because after verb to be, you don't normally use past participle except for passive, which we will talk about later. But for now, we learned that after verb to be, you either continue the sentence because verb to be is the main verb, or you have ing because that's the continuous, right? The progressive. He's going, he's doing, he's working, etc. So that is one way to help you differentiate between this contracted form apostrophe S, whether it's a contraction for is or has. And let me tell you one more thing that has to do with pronunciation, pronouncing have and has, even without contractions. Now, people usually don't pronounce have or has fully, especially when they are in the middle of the sentence. When we start the sentence with it like, have you been? Yeah, they say have, of course. But when you say it in the middle of a sentence, for example, how have you been? Usually, people don't say how have you been. It sounds like robotic or something. They usually say it just like the, or they just pronounce it like the. How have you been? Even if it is not contracted, even if it is written in its full form, people usually pronounce it like how have you been? Or Jane's already eaten lunch, or Mike's quit his job. Mike's, what does that mean, Mike's? Mike has quit his job. You can say that, especially in spoken English. People say that. So the next time you hear that, don't worry, they haven't forgotten about the auxiliary verb. They're not making a mistake, but they just drop a couple of sounds because that's the way it goes in speaking, right? Nobody is going to come to you and tell you, "How have you been?" Well, how have you been? Okay, either it is too formal, and that's why you're saying, "How have you been, sir?" Or "How have you been, sire?" Actually, maybe you're talking to a king or something. But usually people go like V, only V. How have you been? How have you been? How's she been? How's she been? She's already done this. He's already done that. Now, of course, you can say that this is contracted. Well, it can be. But even if it is not contracted, you can contract the pronunciation of have or has this way. Now, with that, we come to the end of our episode. Remember, we talked about a couple of things in this episode. We talked about the past participle, and I kind of tried to help you group things or put things in categories or groups in irregular verbs so that you can remember them better, because the past participle, we said it's very important for any perfect tense we are going to learn, because that's the form of the main verb always. It is past participle with perfect tenses. And we also talked about the present perfect with since and for. We talked about it in the unspecified time in the past and the repeated times from the past until now, because this time can repeat. And finally, we finished talking about contractions, both with using the apostrophe in writing or even in pronunciation. Now, I hope you learned something new today. I hope I kind of simplified the present perfect for you, made it easy for you to understand. But remember, that's not enough. Take the link you can find in the description of the episode. Go to my website. There you will find a lot of exercises that can help you understand what I talked about even better. So take the link, go to EnglishPlusPodcast.com, to the custom post, obviously, that I created for this episode, and take your English with it to the next level. And don't forget about the second link in the description that will take you to my Patreon page. I am counting on your support because that is the only source of money I get to create the content I'm creating for our learning community. Without support from my patrons, I have no other source of income to support this project. So help me help this learning community survive, grow, and thrive. Now, with that being said, this is your host, Danny. Thank you very much for listening to another episode from English Plus Podcast. I will see you next time.